everybody. We're back on this completion of a Passover day and the beginning of the Feast of Matzah. And hopefully you guys partook of the matzah and the bitter herbs and all the other requirements. Glad to get an opportunity. A lot going on. Today is the Passover has a couple of different metaphoric pictures. One of those pictures is that of the ending, but it really is the greater message. The greater story is really the message of a beginning, and as was for them, and the scriptures that I want to look at here tonight. It also is an ending of a season, and so I think that there's a piece of a message which is an ending of a bad season can also be an indicator of the beginning of a good season. And so I feel like this, where we're at, I think you'll see how the message plays out, but there's also some other principles that have to do with the beginning and a good message. A good beginning, which is a good beginning always is a good message, or usually. And so we're going to be tonight in the book of 1 Samuel, and we're going to look at some pretty potent and pretty powerful things. You know, it's becoming more and more clear on many different levels that the disconnectedness of humanity and the disconnectedness of humanity relational wise with Yehovah has really opened the door to lots of spiritual forces. And so we truly are in a battle, and Yehovah has given us some promises which we have to continue to remind ourselves of, that he has promised to us. And some of these things Hannah speaks of. We are going to read the story of Samuel, but I'm really looking at a piece in here, and Hannah has a great insight for all of us, no matter where we are, no matter whether we're in a state right now of not doing right or whether we're in a state of believing that we're doing right. There's a really potent picture. So I hope that you guys will see it, and will not only see it, will understand that if you feel as if there is a massive confusion going on in the world, there's a reason for it. Yehovah, whether we understand it or not, and I had about 100 scriptures I would have liked to have brought tonight, but it's typically hard to do that y'all know how I am. 4 hours is easier than one sometimes. In fact, sometimes the hard part is to put enough thoughts together to just last an hour. That seems like 2 hours is easier. But I guess that just depends on how important the word is to you. It has a piece to do with that as well. If you don't have much to say, it's because you're not thinking about much usually. So let's pray. We're going to blow the shofar, and then we're going to start in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 27. Father, bless you today. Thank you so much for your wonderful love and your mercy. I ask you to help guide us and lead us. Father, I ask that your word, your prophetic unction, those things even that you have spoken, that many all around have no knowledge of what's coming for us, even as Hannah had no knowledge. I bless you and I thank you. I ask you to be with us tonight. Help us to find courage in the times in which we live. I thank you for your goodness. Amen. Michael. whatever reason, I was drawn to this situation of Hannah. And we could read the story. You could read the whole story. If you haven't, maybe you should. I have already. So if you read the whole story, Hannah, as it appeared, was a very God-fearing woman. And I encountered a situation the other day in talking to somebody, and they informed me of how well they were keeping the commandments, and then informed me of how blessed they were. And it was kind of strange because, as you know, as is often the case, sometimes Yehovah giving you revelation doesn't make things easier. Sometimes it actually makes things infinitely harder. I was walking across a Walmart parking lot the other day, and Yehovah spoke a word to me. And I hate to tell you guys this, but if this word comes to pass, none of you have a clue what's going to happen by the end of this earth, by the end of this year. And I'm not going to share it because I don't have the courage to share it. But I do believe he did speak it. So if I seem a little bit heavy, I'm heavy because the word really is heavy. I was blessed today in studying and stuff to find out that Yirmiyahu was able to write in a sefer what Yehovah spoke to him over 23 years' time. That meant that he spent a lot of time in between those times trying to deal with what he'd been told. See, Yehovah can speak to me all day, and none of those words have any value until I speak them. I know y'all don't quite understand this whole principle. Most people react as if nobody's special anymore because they lack understanding. So, Yehovah is still who he always has been. Verse 27, Hannah says, "For I prayed for this child I prayed, and Yehovah has given me the petition which I ask of him." What a wonderful thought. That something is supernatural and overwhelming as a prayer. And so I begin to ponder, wow. If Hannah could just simply pray a prayer and move heaven and earth for supernatural things to happen, I wonder why no one is getting any prayers answered. Stop and think about that for a second. See, it's recorded in a book that's 4,000 years old that Hannah was barren, and Yehovah did that to her. I'm quite sure many people aren't getting what I'm trying to get us to understand. For this child I prayed. And Yehovah has given me my petition, which I ask of him. Therefore also, I have lent him to Yehovah. And as long as he lives, he shall be lent to Yehovah. So let me get this picture. She lives all of her life barren in the womb. I'm quite sure this wasn't the only time that she had ever prayed. So what was different about this time than all the others? So we might ask ourselves, well, what was it that she did? Or maybe even, what was it that she didn't do? And so she makes an oath. She has a child that she prayed for, that Yah gives her, and she makes an oath that if he will give her a child, that as soon as he's weaned, she will give him back forever. Therefore also I have lent him to Jehovah, and as long as he lives, he shall be lent to Jehovah. We find other details that she didn't just pray. I was kind of hung here because this is another message all by itself. Do we really even understand at all how to pray? Or are you still reading the Roman lie about how to pray? Because if you're trying to use that to formulate something in your life, you're doomed. You don't need to tell Jehovah he's special, folks. He already knows who you are. He also knows how you act towards him. So there's something supernatural that's going on here that transcends what appearances are. Therefore also I have lent him to Jehovah. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to Jehovah. And he worshipped Jehovah there. And Hannah prayed and said, my heart rejoices in Jehovah, and my horn is exalted in Jehovah, and my mouth is enlarged over my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. Must have been Jesus, huh? There is none kadosh as Jehovah. For there is none beside you, neither is there any rock like our Elohim. Talk no more so exceedingly proudly, and let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For Jehovah is an Elohim of knowledge. And by him, actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry have ceased. So that the barren have borne 7, and she that has many children is waxed feeble. Jehovah kills, and he makes alive. He brings down to Sheol, and he brings up. Jehovah makes poor, and he makes rich. He brings low, and he lifts up. He raises up the poor, the Ebianim, out of the Adumah, and he lifts up the beggar from the dunghill, to set them amongst princes, to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are Jehovah's, and he has set the world upon them. He will guard the feet of his Yaqib, his beloved, and the wicked shall be silenced in darkness. For by strength shall no man prevail. The adversaries of Jehovah shall be broken to pieces, and out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. Jehovah shall judge the ends of the earth, and he shall give strength unto his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. So you say, well, what does all of that have anything to do with? Well, just as we have a dying, we have a beginning. And I think it's quite strange that we are in a place of beginning, folks. Whether you recognize it or not, well, I know most don't. So please let me try to restate those words maybe a little differently. There is a dying going on, and there also is a new beginning. Unfortunately, what that means may be a very different matter. I chose this to fit with day on the ending of the Passover because I had hopes that we would begin to understand, even as the scripture tells us that as sin comes in, and I think that all of us might, if we couldn't agree in common ground on anything else, we can agree that it's pretty obvious in our society that sin is rising. I think most people I've talked to generally agree with that. And so as we begin a season, and I know that you guys can't and won't be able to fully get, and I guess that's not supposed to be the case. So those who have a heart to hear will hear, and those who don't won't. But we are in the beginning of a time, and if I would speak forth the word, it seems as if there's actually a much bigger paradigm shift going on in the spirit realm right now than I think most anybody that I know has any knowledge of. I would dare say the mass majority of people think that everything is continuing on as it is, and I hate to be the messenger today, but I am called to do that. And it's not just continuing on, folks. There is a new paradigm that is starting. Absolutely. You won't see it for a bit, but it's already starting to change. I think that part of the thing that I would love to focus on is this comment made in verse 3. I do feel as if, although I have been warned, I would have a desire to warn you that things are changing, folks, quick. And the things that Jehovah used to let you get away with, you're not going to get away with anymore. We talk about loving our neighbor as ourselves, and then we pay no attention to our neighbor. So he says to us, talk no more so exceedingly proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. Well, I guess the first thing we would have to do is we would have to actually properly define what those two words even meant. How might those words be living in our lives? How might they be functioning in our lives? Maybe we haven't even stopped to consider. The scriptures clearly tell us over and over again that it's up to us, it's our responsibility to stop and consider such things. It's up to us to pay attention. And so if the things with me had not gone on, then I wouldn't have been in a place to receive what he had to say. Reading Jeremiah, I see that constantly. Everything bad that happened to Jeremiah was to set the stage for what Yehovah was about to put him through. And it's no different no matter which prophet you talk about. So, talk no more so exceedingly proudly, and let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For Yehovah is an Elohim of knowledge. Kind of sounds as if maybe he knows what's going on, right? Kind of sounds like maybe it's not hidden from him. I think sometimes we end up in situations where we ourselves don't even know. The problem is Yehovah does, and I love this correlation that he makes for us. Elohim is a Elohim of knowledge, which is what comes thoughts. And yet he's also an Elohim of action. And so he's telling us, and it seems to be as if for me he's screaming to us right now, that everything that is doesn't have to remain as it is just because you deem it that it will. Many places in the other scriptures we're told pieces which corroborate with all of this. That in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, everybody's waiting for a rapture, but what if that's not what's coming? In the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Ask yourself, have we really done anything to better humanity as an individual person? You don't need to answer to me. I'm not your help. But I do think that you should ask yourself, what have you done to better humanity? And then I think all of us collectively could ask ourselves, what have we done to better humanity, to bring the essence of Yehovah to this earth? There's been lots of changes, certainly, that I've learned, and what I'm finding out is that one of the greatest lies that we have to overcome from Christianity is the fact that what Christianity tells us a blessing is really not a blessing at all. And because I do know that this corruptness that lives inside of us is so prevalent to us, not to those who maybe didn't grow up in Christianity. And for some, maybe it's worse. Maybe the Pentecostals are better off than the Catholics. I don't know. But to me, corruption is corruption. And if we're all corrupted in our mind. And so, I believe Yehovah is trying to prepare some people for some things that might not be very favorable to humanity, if I can say it like that. And so I feel like it is a very vitally important concept for us to get this revelation that Hannah had. See, Hannah understood some things. That's why she saw the supernatural function in her life. You have to admit it's quite a strange statement for a woman to weep and cry for years to have a baby only to wean that baby from her breast and then give it to the priest. Kind of like you have to ask yourself, what was the point? Was it just so that you could brag that you had had a child? Or was there more? I think there has to be more. I don't think she was just being prideful so she had a child and then gave it away. There's more going on here. And so the message then to us comes, listen to the prayer that she prayed, folks. And Hannah prayed and she said, my heart rejoices in Yehovah. She didn't say she was rejoicing for all the things that were going on around her. She rejoiced because of the favor that she had found in the eyes and the sight of Yehovah. That's a lot different. Finding peace and truly finding peace with Yehovah and in Yehovah is completely different than you being happy. So my heart rejoices in Yehovah, and my horn or my authority has been exalted in Yehovah. My mouth is enlarged over my enemies because I rejoice. So the reason why these things could happen is because of what was happening internally in her, not because of what was happening externally to her. There is none set apart as Yehovah. First off, because there is none beside him. Ask yourself that question. Is that really true? If we look at the blessings and the cursings of the 10 words, can you really honestly look yourself in a mirror and admit that you even keep the first commandment? See, because that picture comes out in her. She gets it. And I think that we have a time and an opportunity in our lives of coming out of Christianity to also choose to get it. Unfortunately, the scriptures prophesy and tell us that most are not. So, as is always the case, as he says in Yirmiyahu, that my prophets rise up early, and they've told you over and over and over and over again, but you refuse to listen. But I rejoice in your salvation, and there is none holy as Yehovah, for there is none beside you, neither is there any rock like our Elohim. Talk no more exceedingly proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth, for Yehovah is an Elohim of knowledge. And by him, actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. Think about this. Part of the metaphoric picture she's trying to show us, or he is trying to show us, gives us a picture that wherever we at, there's some things that maybe we need to contend with. Do you really believe that this person, this mighty man whose bow is broken, which is also a symbolic picture of power, authority, dominance, do you think that man knew until his bow was broken that it was going to be broken? And so we go along and we think everything's okay, while maybe everything's really not okay. And we equate things to be one way when really maybe they're a lot different. than what we think they are. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. Always above and beneath, always the opposites together. Strong with the weak, the rich with the poor. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread. So why would this message then be important to us? Because if there is in fact a huge change coming, folks, everything that you think is right now may not be right tomorrow. The safety and the confidence that you have today may not exist tomorrow. I believe that Yehovah is the kindest creator that a human could imagine if they can imagine him. He says he will never do anything on this earth that he does not first warn his spokesman. And we sit around and speak proudly and arrogantly as if we know what Yehovah is thinking. Now you have to admit that's pretty absurd, since we can't figure out how to make a human, and he created all of this. So what are we supposed to see here? I believe what he would like for us to see. I believe the message that I have to share is that you need to begin to prepare yourself. You need to begin without in any way trying to be offensive. Maybe for the first time in your life, you need to begin to look at who you really are. I've noticed for a long time that there seems to be a spirit amongst people that they can view everybody else as failures, but they never seem to be able to view their own. And the spirit of Yehovah is exactly contrary to that. What he wants you to do is to view your own and not everyone else's. And that's very hard to do, because it really requires being honest. And in our society, being honest is a very, very, very bad trait. Even society teaches us that being honest isn't good. If you're honest, you know, it may get you out of that promotion that you want. If you're honest, you know, you might make somebody mad. We like to term them as things like political correctness, and the reality of it is it's just being honest. Can a man morph into a girl? Not if you're honest. You can create words and names and pronouns and all of these other things. So, Yehovah is trying to get us to open our eyes. I believe, with no questions, that this is a time, a very, very, very unique time, and an opportunity for people to begin to take stock and take hold of themselves. I know that you guys might not quite understand the depth when I say words like there are demonic forces being released on this earth, and there are those that are close to me that I talk with often who recognize and see some things that maybe they've never seen before that are happening even right now, folks. The problem is if you aren't spiritually inclined, you can't see the spirit realm. And if Yehovah isn't speaking to you, you don't have a clue about what he's saying. And so there was a way that he dealt with that, but we haven't always followed that path very well. And so I believe he is desirous for us on this new beginning to begin to recognize that if there is a paradigm shift going on, and there is, and if it is, then there must by virtue for us to be successful in him. I'm not talking about successful in the world. I could care less about that. I'm talking about being successful with him, that we must begin to have a paradigm shift in us. If you'll notice here, every one of these things that Hannah has talked about is a paradigm shift. From success to failure, and from failure to success. Those are paradigm shifts, changes of direction. This person's life was going not good, and all of a sudden, there was a change of direction. This person's life seemed like they had everything under control, and all of a sudden, everything changed. And the problem is that Yehovah is the one who does these things. And I'm afraid that maybe, on the whole, we're not very prepared for that. I don't think we're very prepared for things that are coming. Should we be focusing on future? Not really, although he doesn't tell me words so that I can disbelieve them. I often tell people, I don't know what it means, but is that not so? Is that not so? I don't know, but why? Because I don't have any desire to put my thoughts and my will on what it is that he says. I believe this. If Yehovah speaks, it'll come to pass. You just have to wait and see it. And so, along with that whole concept, he's at the same time, he's trying to help prepare people. His loving kindness is to let us know ahead of time. How many times did Moshe say over and over again, if you will keep his commandments that I speak to you this day? What is that? That's a warning. We know with every if, there's also a if not. And so we go along in life, and I think sometimes we end up getting disconnected from him, and we don't even know that we do. Other people probably can see that. Maybe sometimes we have an opportunity, if we did look, that we would see that. And so I believe that what he wants us to understand is that wherever we are, I think all of us could afford to be a little bit cautious. And even more so right now, folks. Verse 6 just shook me to the core when I read this. And if you knew why, you would be shaken to your core as well. I'm wondering where we could live and where we could survive in a society where where such a strong statement is made. Yehovah kills, and Yehovah makes alive. I know most of you haven't been there, but I have been there to receive those messages. And it's never easy. It's never fun. It's never good. But we have come in the place that we're in humanity, where we have, for lack of better words, we have angered Yehovah massively, folks. Now, I'm not talking about you necessarily individually. I think that you're supposed to be the judge of that. Judge yourself lest you be judged. Because I'm not your judge. I'm dog paddling. I never learned how to swim, and I'm dog paddling, just trying to keep my head above drowning. And that's the perfect place for us to be. We should be working with all that we have just to survive. Because herein lies our reliance on Him. He hasn't left me. I don't suspect He's left anybody else that He didn't intend to. But it does bring into a perspective, though we don't like to hear about it, we want to hear about the rejoice and the joy, and we should be doing those things. We should be doing those things even right now, but that doesn't take away being circumspect, not as fools. Of course, we know the Hebraic understanding of the word used as fools most of the time has to do with being an unbeliever. So we are supposed to be very open-eyed, not as an unbeliever, redeeming the time that we have while we're on this earth, for the days are evil, folks. We certainly live in that, and those pressures are weighing down on every one of us. And I would love to tell you today that there's a message that the rapture's going to happen and we're all going to be out of here and leave all the pagans to, oh, I'm sorrowful. The pagans are the ones that are going in the rapture. At the same time that Yehovah is doing this, He also is raising those that are poor. He also is raising those who have walked humbly before Him. So we have a dichotomy going on in our society, and we have to ask ourselves and be honest. Are we the prideful, or are we the humble? I shared Micah chapter 6, verse 8, I believe it is, a few weeks ago with you guys. Absolutely profound statement. It really kind of breaks the whole thing down into one simple little statement, doesn't it? What is it that Yehovah wants from us? But for us to walk humbly before Him. What does that mean? What does it mean for you to walk humbly before Yehovah? You realize that your destiny is determined by your definition, right or wrong, of that one statement. That will determine your inevitable end. So, I guess that's where verse 6 fits in, huh? He will do this to the unhumble, and He will do this to the humble. See, the truth is that if we took all of these words that Hannah said, and they're amazing, there's no doubt, if we took all of them and applied it to that one verse, there's really a much larger message here about Yehovah in relation to humanity. Did Yehovah bring His word to pass in the people that He brought out of Mitzrayim? Think about the concept of that. The Yehudim say that there was 2 million people that came out at Mitzrayim, and that there were 600,000 men. Ponder how many graves must be in the desert of the Arabah right now. That's pretty huge. Did Yehovah stay His word? Or did He not show us that if He says something, He means it? As far as I understand, there was not one person who came out who went in. See, the end was the beginning, and the beginning was also the end. It's up to us to choose which one of those two or where we're at. And so, We are here, coming out, and the task that we're walking into, folks, is daunting. Let me sow those seeds to you. We're supposed to remember this forever as a memorial, correct? Pesach, Passover. I know it's all about the killing of the lamb. But it's not about the killing of the lamb at all. We got to see the wonderful 10 Commandments about how everybody was so happy the day they left. But you have to admit, going out of surety into the land of Nod, the land of nowhere, I'm not quite sure that they were singing and dancing like we get the picture with Charleston Heston. It was a pretty daunting task to leave everything you ever know. So look at us in Christianity. What if it is true? What if all Christianity really was nothing but a story that was written by the Roman scholars? And they sat down and they spent hundreds of thousands of hours researching history so that they could make this fit? And what if that is our belief system? Wouldn't that be like coming out of Egypt? I personally think all of this is correlated exactly at the exact appropriate time. Because where we're headed now, folks, we're headed into a wilderness, and we're going to be given many opportunities to fall in the wilderness. So it seems as if Yehovah is taking away from humanity, little by little, pieces of the lie. And unfortunately, many people will never even know that it's being taken away. That's the horrible part, or at least one horrible part. The wonderful part is that there will be a people who do recognize, and they will give heed, like a Joshua and a Caleb. See, they got it. And so, no matter where we're standing, whether we deem ourselves to be blessed or deemed ourselves to just be, isn't really the question tonight. The question we have tonight is, as we go into this new thing of being exposed to some things that maybe make us have to question everything. Because I don't know about y'all guys, but I've certainly been brought to that place. Many of the people I've talked to say they have come to the same place. And so, what do we then have that we can hang on to? What is it that we can then, because we either want to go back to Mitzrayim, to the meat pots, we believe Yehovah, or there's still one more option. We rebel. You know, not everybody that were rebelled and died in the wilderness, folks, wanted to go back to Mitzrayim. And so it seems like to me, for every one of us, we're kind of standing in a place, and our base has been shaken because we've begun a new journey. And this journey is into a very hostile land. This journey, we have to learn to be men and women of integrity. This journey, we're not just waiting for someone to come back and save us. We're actually finding out now that we have to walk. And our actions really are the source of either the things that Yehovah brings to us, or the things that Yehovah takes away from us. And I believe he wants us to be prepared. I believe he's going to have a people who will trust him. And trust seldom works itself out when everything is going wonderful. So when do we have to trust? When everything is not going wonderful. When do we have to trust? When all the security has been taken away. I lived for 20 years and I knew, boy, where I was going. If I die tomorrow, I know where I'm going. Now I cringe at thinking about even saying those words. So, I bring a warning to each and every one of us tonight that there are some things coming, folks. And I'm not sure we're going to be ready for it, but it ain't going to matter, because if it comes, it's going to come anyway. And so I would like to lift you tonight by telling you, if you haven't paid heed to the words, maybe you should do that for the time. Maybe the game really is over. Maybe it really is that we are going to move as a humanity into a time where the things that were of the past are fading away. And there is actually a paradigm shift in the spirit realm beginning. And actually it's been begun for a while. But it's a new stage of that, I believe. It's the concept. So, time to prepare. How do we do that? How do we do that piece? How do we prepare, Michael? Very good. My grandson got the answer. He got the prize. By thinking, right? So what am I trying to say to us tonight? It's time for us to begin to think. Things that you have done mindlessly that are against him may have a lot more of an effect on you now than they would have maybe in the past. But you have to admit he's been very kind to us to show us a lot of truth. You have to admit not one of the persons that I know can plead ignorant, because none of you are ignorant. Every one of you have been told over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, as well as myself. And so I hope none of us don't pay heed to his warning. What if, just ask yourself, what if things changed? What if you woke up in the morning and something had happened that changed everything? What would you do? Well, I would encourage you that we might need to do some of the things a little bit more like Hannah did than maybe what we've been doing. Maybe we need to begin to look at our relationship with him. Are we really trusting him in the way that we should? Or are we really still trying to be our own gods? See, that's a sickness that is functioning in this society. It is a sickness, and it is functioning in this society. So, I hope that we will take a hold of that. That this isn't the time's gone past. This is a different time altogether. And he's kind enough with us that he desires for us to know ahead of time maybe some things we need to look at. It's a new beginning, folks. This is the Passover. The time to come out of one. It's time. If you're holding on to your Christianity, it's time to let go of it. It is time to begin to cleave to Jehovah. He is our salvation. He is our rock. Jehovah. Let's pray. Father, bless you tonight. I know this is not the celebration message, but it is a celebration that you are still the thing. You are still the important matter. You haven't changed. You're not going to change. We still have the same responsibilities to you. Love you with all of our hearts, with all of our minds, with all of ourselves. And then love those around us. May your will and your word and your protection, Father, may it do exactly what you intended for it to do this day. May we recognize that no matter how low we are, you're capable of lifting us. And no matter how high we are, you're capable of humbling us. And by so doing, may we get that in our heart, and may we just choose to walk humbly before you. And know that you are what you say, and that you have every intentions of doing exactly what you said you would. I bless you today for this new beginning as we go into this new year, this new cycle of yours, as we move along in the unsurety of all the things around us. Our strong stay has to be in you and you alone. I bless you. You are great and you are mighty and you are above all of these things and you are kind and you always warn your people for their own protection. And I bless you today for your mercy. I bless you for those insights that don't always make us want to rejoice, but at the same time, we can rejoice that you love us. So I ask you that you be with us. I ask you, everyone, Father, that would call upon your name. Call upon your name. That you would fulfill your word in us, and that we would see your loving kindness and your protection, and give you great honor and great glory because of it. Bless you today. Amen. Mike? All right. We have a wonderful opportunity to excel for him. We have a wonderful opportunity to walk in his goodness. Shalom to each and every one of you. We'll be back on Shabbat at 2 o'clock. Hopefully we'll see you then.